Welcome to Business Notes. I'm your host, Diane Bogino. My guest today is David Doerrier. David works with trainers, facilitators, sales organizations, and other presenters that are struggling to engage and impact their audience. The lack of engagement in any presentation will cause your audience to tune out, forget you and your message, and will undoubtedly not buy from you or take a next step. As an expert in the adult learning theory, David works with his clients to incorporate 8 simple principles that are guaranteed to motivate any audience to listen, act, and be more likely to retain your information, take a next step, and purchase your product or service. David is a seasoned Toastmaster, proficient instructional designer, train the trainer, and facilitation specialist, voiceover artist, classroom facilitator, and professional Santa Claus. Now, here's David to share his wisdom and expertise on how to be a powerful presenter or facilitator. David, welcome to Business Notes, and thank you for being on the show today.
Oh, well, thank you so much for having me back.
Yeah, it's great. Repeat guests are awesome. I think that says a great deal about both of us. Let's dig into this adult theory. Tell us what adult theory is, David.
Yes, well, thank you, Diane. Right out of the gate, great question. Yeah, the adult learning theory. This is my background is training. I've been a part of corporate training for 30 years, and one of the elements to learn how to be a good trainer is to understand the differences in all learners. And one of the ways to understand those differences is to understand and practice the adult learning theory. And it's made up of, there are a number of different iterations of the adult learning theory. The father of the adult learning theory, Malcolm Knowles, had 5 principles. The principles that I use and practice have 8 principles. However, having eight principles, having 5 principles, having 1 principle, it really doesn't matter. What's the point of the adult learning theory, the objective of it is always the same. It's engaging the audience. The more the audience is engaged, the more that the audience is interacting, the more that they are problem solving, the more that they are can see and feel and taste and have an emotional connection to the content, the more it's going to stick. So whether you use 5 principles, 8 principles, or 1, like I said, the objective is always the same: engaging the audience.
So why should presenters be familiar with the adult learning theory?
I feel that they should be familiar with it for 2 reasons. Well, for a lot of reasons, but they can use it in 2 situations. One, when they're actually on the stage, the adult learning theory, the principles, again, what I mentioned earlier, all about engaging the audience. So one of the principles is the principle of repetition. So having an understanding of the principle of repetition and why repetition is important, and incorporating appropriate repetition into your presentation, understanding the value of that by repeating things appropriately, that's going to make things stick. So if I understand that as a presenter, that at least one of those principles to make things stick is to repeat them appropriately. So using it on the stage. The second area where the adult learning theory comes into play is when you're writing your presentation, your speech, your workshop, keeping in mind all of these principles. The 8 principles are what all adults are looking for in every learning or engaging situation. And there are also differences that are highlighted in the adult learning theory as well. So bottom line, by understanding the differences between learners, by understanding what learners are looking for, then you'll be able to apply them as you're presenting on the stage and as you're writing your material.
So what about your background prepared you for your business?
I've got quite a varied background. I'll talk about the beard here. I've been a Santa Claus for 30 years. Now, for 29 years of these 30 years, I've had a strap-on beard. I don't want to use the word fake beard. It was us in the Santa business, we call it a designer beard. And that Santa Claus, that puts me into so many different situations. So improv skills are important. I have taken improv classes here in Atlanta as well. I have a theater background of being on stage, of learning lines, of developing a character, of projecting my voice, working through insecurities on the stage, developing my my stance or my bravado, is that if that's the right term there, on stage. So I use that in my background to help when it comes to coaching clients on presentation skills, or how to work through nervousness or work through barriers. I also have a military background. I spent 28 years in the military. So leadership and working with a diverse group of people from not only around the United States, but at times around the world, and having to communicate differently. My background is also training and development. I've been a part of that for 30 years. Developing training, writing training, delivering training, and training trainers to train. And that's been my passion, of training trainers to train. So I would say that my background, and also being an introvert, I've also been a really good observer of people. And I feel that I'm very good at delivering sensitive information, giving someone feedback on their presentation skills is like looking at them naked and talking about all the nuances of their body. It's very uncomfortable to receive that type of feedback. People have trouble with maybe all types of feedback, but very sensitive about their presentation skills. So I feel that my background has really prepared me to not only be a good presenter, but also a very good evaluator of others, and being able to deliver that information, that sensitive information, professionally.
Yeah. David, you make a great point. And when people are trying to develop their stage presence, people don't realize that everybody goes through all the things that you talked about, the nervousness, maybe they are introverts, or maybe they're extroverts and they need to be pulled back, but they have that self-doubt and the fear and the nervousness. But you teach them how to use those things, but everybody goes through those. And I think it's important for people to know that.
Yeah, Tony Randall, the stage and TV actor from years ago, said once that if you're not nervous, something's wrong. That he would get so nervous before a performance, or going on Johnny Carson, or a television, one of those variety shows from back in the 70s and so on. He would get so nervous that he would throw up. He would get sick. However, he learned how to work through that nervousness and that's what I teach as well. I get nervous every time. I was nervous coming here today, but what makes or breaks a good presenter or a good speaker is how to work through that. And also, it's all about mindset. That don't use the word nervousness. I'm excited. I can't wait to deliver this presentation to this group, because one of the first things I coach my clients on is that, number one, everybody in that audience wants you to be successful. Probably the only person in the room that feels like you're going to do a bad job is you. And so it's natural. It's natural to be nervous. It's natural to make a mistake, to lose your place once in a while. But it's what makes or breaks a great speaker is how they bounce back from that, and take that moment to pause, gather your thoughts, make fun of it if you have to. Make fun. Oh, there I go again. There's my senior moment again, or whatever it is, and move on.
Yeah. So based on your experience, what do you think that presenters struggle with the most these days?
I think the number one would be the data dump. It's that we, as subject matter experts, we are expert in what we do. In my case, presentation skills, technical mumbo jumbo about presentation skills. However, my audience may be hearing this information for the very first time. So the area that I have found with subject matter experts is they'll come into a room with an enormous amount of information and they just dump it onto their audience without first analyzing where is my audience's current proficiency level? What is their current knowledge of this product? So I would say number one that subject matter experts have a problem with, it's the data dump. That's something that we all struggle with. Many of us subject matter experts have realized that we do it, so we've corrected it. But I would say that there's a large number that don't realize that they're doing the data dump.
Sure. And, David, caring about it, you want people to have the information and you want them to learn. So it's understandable that people struggle with that. So, in my world, I talk about employee engagement. In your world, you talk about audience engagement. Would you define that for our audience today?
This is a question I ask all of my students, all of the folks that I coach and teach it was one of the first things we talk about at the beginning of the session, because we need to define so we're all on the same page what engagement means. Now, in the Zoom world, engagement could be using the chat, using the poll, using other third-party applications. It's getting the audience to do something, to think about something, where they're asked a question. Now they have to think about the response and then respond. Small group activities, large group activities are all examples of engaging the audience. Bottom line, more engagement, the more it's going to stick. Now, along with all of those activities, there's one additional piece which is directly linked to the adult learning theory, and that is where you now can emotionally connect with your audience. For example, by asking questions. Have you ever experienced this? Has this ever happened to you? Have you ever seen this? If this happens to you, how would you feel about that? Getting the audience now to, here's another part of the adult learning theory, is relevance. That if the content is not relevant, it's not, well, let me ask you this question. I'm going to, if the information, if the podcaster, or if the information in the podcast is not relevant, what are you going to do, Diane?
Well, it's got to be relevant to what they're trying to do with their business. Just like if you go off on some tangent that would not promote you personally, I would pull you back. I would probably stop the podcast and say, David, let's get back on point, because you have a goal you're trying to achieve. So I would bring you back on point.
Okay. And that's a great way to look at it as a student in the classroom, or as a participant listening to a speaker, and the content is not relevant. In most cases, I would think that people are going to tune out. And you're doing a very similar thing, that listen, my audience wants to hear this. We're recording this, so now we have the luxury of me stopping you and saying, hey, we need to go in a different direction. So I would say that to engage your audience, it needs to be relevant. It not only am I getting you to do activities, question and answer, using the poll, using the chat, using the whiteboard, all of those resources in Zoom world, but I'm also delivering the message in a way that is relevant, and my audience can now see it, feel it, taste it, smell it, experience it within themselves, so they come up with the answer. Another part of the adult learning theory is ownership. So now they own, yes, I see the value. I feel the value.
Right.
Yes.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, I look at training as a train that and I'm originally from New York, and I envision a subway station, or you can envision any platform on any train here with MARTA. And what I've been able to do is to give people the instructions to all of them that they've been able to prepare for the training. They've all been able to arrive on the platform because they all know when are we meeting, why are we meeting, how are we going to meet, what's all the prerequisites, and all. They've got all the information they need to get to the platform or to get to the day of training. Now my job as a facilitator is to get them on the train, to get everybody on the same train. And to do that, I have to create an opening that describes the value. Why are we here? What are we doing? When we get to the destination, you're going to have X. You're all going to receive X. And the reason you're going to get X is because it's going to have this value for you, each and every one of you. Now I've been able to describe the value in a way that everybody's on the train. Now, as we go through the lesson, I want to make sure that nobody's getting off at different stops or no one's falling off the train. And the way that they could fall off the train or the way that they could get off the train at different stops is that I've done a data dump, for example. I'm not engaging my audience. My audience is now somewhere else in their head. And I'm sure you and people that are watching this have experienced that in a training situation or listening to someone at work deliver just data and they're lost. I see that as that they fell off the train.
I love that analogy. That is great. So how in the world did you wind up in this business of helping presenters connect with their audience?
My training career started back in the mid-90s with the military, where I was hired to work at Dobbins Air Force Base as an instructor in my career field, logistics, loading airplanes and downloading airplanes and loading everything and anything on a plane that would fit on a military or civilian aircraft. So from I guess the Dave D School of Hard Knocks, I learned instructional design and presenting. And because I'm a perfectionist, I wanted to make sure that every time I got up in front of that audience to deliver content, that I was doing the best job I could. So I started researching on facilitation, on teaching, learned about the adult learning theory, understood the differences, that we're not all the same. Everybody's different. Everybody learns differently, and started to apply those things. And then when I left the military and started working in corporate, one of the companies I worked for had an internal training program. And we started training the trainers that were part of our organization. And I just loved it. I loved training folks to be trainers. Or I've also worked with folks on how to be excellent presenters and how to write their material. So that's how I kind of progressed through the years, starting with the military, learning instructional design. I'm still learning instructional design. I'm still learning how to present in front of folks and feel comfortable with that. But I just love helping people to be the best presenter that they can be.
Yeah, that's your love for your craft is obvious, David. That's great. And who is your ideal client?
My ideal client would be an organization with a group of trainers. A lot of times training organizations have a group of trainers in their training department, and many of them have come from working their way through the ranks of the organization. They're subject matter experts. They're great understanding their subject, but the area that they struggle with is how to facilitate and how to engage others. So one ideal customer would be the training organization, also sales organizations. The more that I train trainers to train, the more I use these principles, the more I saw that any presenter, including salespeople, can use these same principles. For example, the principle of ownership, that in a classroom, my students, my learners have to get to a point where they now see the value of learning this new information. That if I learn this, then I'm going to get this positive result. Same things needed in sales. I need to be able to present my product in a way that now you see the value of spending the money of using this product. So it's the same thing, principle of ownership.
Yeah, great. And what is it that you love about coaching and training others, David?
The aha factor. Every time I ask trainers, what is it you love about training? And they all say the same thing, the aha, to be able to see that in the faces, in the eyes, in the presentation skills, the improvement in the presentation skills, to see that and to see them come back and say, wow, this was something. Yes, I was nervous, but I was able to work through it, and I applied this and I applied that, and it's all starting to pay off. That to me is, yeah, I love that.
All right. So David, if somebody wants to get a hold of you, they can email you, they can go to your website. You can do virtual or in person these days, I assume.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. And you are even a certified virtual presenter, I believe, correct?
Certified virtual presenter and certified virtual facilitator.
Aha.
Yeah,
Good.
some
Good.
fancy titles.
Well, it's good to know that when you go to train people, they've got somebody that knows what they're doing. So I appreciate your time today. You've really brought some good information to our audience, and I hope that this message reaches the ears of some executives as well, because to promote their company and their products and their services, I think they need to get out there and engage their audience as well.
Well, I know you said we're getting to the end, but you asked earlier about the engaging the employee and engaging your audience. Just basic presentation skills. The lack of basic presentation skills is a nonverbal to your audience. If you're trying to engage your employees, I would say that at one of the things at the foundation would be basic professional presentation skills. The lack of them is going to send a message to people of like he doesn't care, or look at this guy, every other word out of his or her mouth, getting lost and no excitement, no motivation. That sends a message to not only the internal folks, but your external clients as well.
Absolutely. Excellent point. That is a great way to end this one too, David. Thank you so much. I appreciate your time today. Thank you for watching Business Notes. We've been speaking with David Doerrier, who works with trainers, facilitators, sales organizations, and other presenters that are struggling to engage and impact their audience. I'm your host, Diane Bogino, bringing you business ideas you can bank on.